This is an artificially aware original production.
The idea of eternal return, or eternal recurrence, stands as one of philosophy's most challenging, almost sinister notions. Imagine your life, the choices, the triumphs, and even those painfully embarrassing mistakes, repeating on an infinite loop, eternally cycling through the same moments over and over without end. It's not a bedtime story, but a relentless déjà vu that stretches the imagination to its breaking point. Eternal return has a peculiar hold on the human mind because it's not merely a thought about the past or a prediction of the future. Instead, it's an ultimatum about the present, a demand that everything you do, everything you are, might be condemned to eternal repetition. Would you live differently if this were true? Would you fear this fate, or perhaps would you embrace it as a wild, godlike challenge? The Stoics, Nietzsche, and even contemporary thinkers have wrestled with this brutal idea, each grasping for a way to cope with the possibility of infinite recurrence. Today we journey through the centuries, revisiting this ancient question that, like an unyielding echo, refuses to die. From its ancient roots, the concept of eternal return has hinted that human experience is not a straightforward line, but a closed loop, a cosmic roundabout. It's like this. Imagine the entirety of existence as a wheel endlessly spinning, with every life, every event eternally destined to occur, vanish, and reoccur. Ancient Greece, known for its love of paradox and drama, was home to thinkers like the Stoics, who wrapped themselves around this unnerving idea. Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium, proposed that the universe periodically burns itself down to nothing in a fiery cosmic reset. Then, as if nothing had ever happened, it springs back to life, replaying every atom, every event, every tear and laugh in perfect detail, only to burn and resurrect once again. To the Stoics, this was just part of the natural order, a cycle of creation, destruction, and rebirth like clockwork. It was a radical idea, one that positioned life as a reenactment, as predictable as the seasons, yet as unchangeable as fate itself. But the Stoics weren't alone in dreaming of cosmic cycles. Half a world away, Hinduism and Buddhism embraced the wheel of time, or Kala Chakra, an endless turning that brought individuals back through lifetimes in the grip of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. They saw time not as a one-way street, but as a sacred circle, one in which all beings were swept along, endlessly returning, until perhaps they could find liberation from it. The ancient Greeks might not have had direct links to these Eastern philosophies, but both traditions sensed the weight of cyclic existence, a sense that all things, down to the smallest grain of sand and blade of grass, were intertwined in a never-ending flow. To the Hindu and Buddhist mind, reincarnation was not a curse, but a chance for spiritual evolution, a way to learn from each life until the chains of rebirth could be broken. Here, the idea wasn't to fear the cycle, but to transcend it, to break free from the endless return. But the cyclical view of time began to lose its luster in the West, where Christianity introduced a revolutionary idea, linear history. To Christians, time was no endless wheel of repetition, but a straight, purposeful line with a clear beginning, middle, and end. History wasn't a loop, but a divine plan, marked by creation, salvation, and eventual judgment. This concept, championed by theologians like Augustine, was a profound shift. Where the Stoics saw endless cycles, Augustine saw a God-driven trajectory that promised redemption and an escape from the repeating mundanity of existence. Time was not a prison, but a path to an eternal afterlife, a way out of earthly suffering, where every soul would find its ultimate destiny. Eternal recurrence clashed with this vision. After all, if souls were forever returning to the same trials and temptations, where was the promise of salvation, the possibility of becoming a higher being? The West, with Christianity as its guide, largely abandoned the old cycles for a history that pointed toward a singular, transcendent endpoint. But no philosophical concept worth its salt stays buried forever. Enter Friedrich Nietzsche, the bold, chain-smoking iconoclast of the 19th century. Known for his fierce attacks on tradition and his reverence for life's raw intensity, Nietzsche resurrected the idea of eternal return with a ferocity all his own. The idea of eternal return or eternal recurrence has existed in various forms since antiquity, he wrote. Put simply, it's the theory that existence recurs in an infinite cycle as energy and matter transform over time. In ancient Greece, the Stoics believed that the universe went through repeating stages of transformation similar to those found in the Wheel of Time of Hinduism and Buddhism. Nietzsche wasn't promoting this as just another old theory. He was wielding it as a thought experiment meant to confront us with the full, crushing weight of our choices. Imagine living your life not once but an infinite number of times, down to the smallest details. Imagine facing every triumph, every regret, every painful misstep, with the understanding that you would be condemned to live it all over again, unless, of course, you embraced the life you'd chosen, every part of it. To Nietzsche, this wasn't a matter of belief. It was a dare, a challenge to face existence head-on, no matter how bleak it might appear. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche presents eternal recurrence not as abstract theory, but as a bone-rattling challenge. He plants the concept in the penultimate section of the book, right before launching into Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where the idea takes root as a cornerstone of his philosophical worldview. It's here, in a passage titled The Greatest Weight, that Nietzsche drops his bombshell, a cosmic wager. What if you had to live this life, in every excruciating detail, not just once, but an infinite number of times? Not some vague afterlife, but this life, from its banalities to its gut-wrenching pains. What if some day or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness, he writes, and say to you, this life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more, even this spider and this moonlight between the trees, and even this moment and I myself. This isn't just philosophy, it's a dare. In this moment, Nietzsche forces his readers to confront themselves with merciless clarity, asking whether they could find the courage to say yes to the endless repetition of their own lives. It's an idea so potent that, if taken seriously, it demands an entire reevaluation of one's existence. Imagine, then, the figure of the demon, this whispering, cynical creature lurking in the shadows, slipping into your deepest solitude to present you with Nietzsche's challenge. Here, the demon isn't a figure of folklore, but a psychological device, a way to amplify your awareness of each moment's gravity. Would you recoil, horrified at the thought of reliving every flaw, every regret, every moment of boredom and pain? Or could you bear the thought? Nietzsche crafts this scenario as an existential acid test. The demon asks a question that demands an answer, not just in thought, but in the very fabric of your actions and choices. With the weight of eternity pressing down, Nietzsche suggests you might be forced to either curse your life or to embrace it with a newfound intensity, as if each choice now came with the price of eternity. In that single haunting encounter, the demon's question challenges you to live in such a way that you would gladly endure each moment forever, turning every mundane day into a deliberate affirmation of existence. To embrace such a life is, for Nietzsche, to love one's fate, or as he calls it, amor fati. This idea is more than passive acceptance. It is a fierce, radical love for one's life in its entirety, even the parts most would wish to change. Nietzsche believed that to truly embrace eternal recurrence, one must go beyond merely tolerating life's pain and contradictions. Amor fati is a demand to desire every heartbeat, every error, as if they were intentional strokes on the canvas of one's existence. It's a wild, passionate, almost rebellious love for fate that transforms every triviality into a cosmic affirmation. Nietzsche sees in this idea not an escape from life's suffering, but a celebration of it, a way to fuse with life so completely that even tragedy becomes a cherished part of one's journey. My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, he declared, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. To Nietzsche, loving fate is the mark of true freedom, an unshakable resolve to live fully, rejecting the escape routes of pity or regret. It's a defiance of resignation, a furious yes to everything that has happened and will happen. Nietzsche develops this further in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where his titular prophet, Zarathustra, confronts the eternal return not with eagerness, but with dread. For Zarathustra, the prospect of infinite recurrence is initially horrifying, an eternal prison in which every mistake, every betrayal is inescapably replayed. The idea gnaws at him, filling him with revulsion. It's only over time that Zarathustra learns to transcend this horror and embrace eternal recurrence as a celebration of life's fullness, flaws, and all. This evolution in Zarathustra's character mirrors Nietzsche's own journey with the concept, from existential terror to a transcendent acceptance, even joy. Nietzsche believed that, at the heart of life, there lies a tension between the tragic and the joyous, and in Zarathustra, he allows us to experience that struggle firsthand. Zarathustra's eventual embrace of recurrence marks a monumental shift, an embrace of what he calls faithfulness to the earth, a rejection of otherworldly ideals. Here, eternal recurrence isn't a curse, but a call to honor every moment on earth as if it were immortal, grounding our passions and joys in the here and now. In embracing this idea, Nietzsche gives us what can only be described as an ethical imperative, an existential measuring stick. Eternal recurrence is not merely a metaphysical theory, but a demand to live each day in such a way that you would be willing to repeat it for eternity. Imagine every decision you make, every interaction weighed down by this question: if today was all I had forever, would I be content? It's a brutal standard, one that leaves no room for half-hearted living or casual regrets. Nietzsche's challenge calls for a ruthless honesty, a commitment to authenticity in every action. Is this such a deed as I am prepared to perform an incalculable number of times? He asks, daring us to examine the worth of each choice we make. In this sense, eternal recurrence becomes a kind of moral compass, urging us to eliminate any behavior, any compromise that we would not want to endure on an infinite loop. It's an impossible ideal, and yet it's precisely this impossibility that makes it so powerful. Nietzsche is inviting us to live with the intensity of eternity in each moment, to approach life as a work of art that must stand the test of endless time. As an ethical imperative, eternal recurrence forces a reckoning with life's decisions, compelling each person to reflect upon the weight of their actions. Nietzsche's challenge demands more than just passive contemplation. It demands a radical honesty about whether you could endure your choices in an endless cycle. Imagine the infinite gravity it would place upon even the smallest acts. This is what sets eternal return apart as a fierce moral ideal. In a world where every action, every regret, every fleeting decision plays out eternally, there's no room for negligence, for indifference. This idea permeated Nietzsche's writing, driving a philosophy that insists on authenticity, responsibility, and the ruthless examination of one's own values. It asks you to imagine each decision as eternal, forcing the realization that every day counts, every moment is charged with existential weight. Nietzsche's demand is for a life so intentional, so thoroughly lived, that each moment could be welcomed back with fierce acceptance. For those brave enough to answer this challenge, it becomes a code of conduct, a lifelong commitment to genuine, unflinching self-honesty. Nietzsche's notion of eternal recurrence didn't stop with him. It found a fertile ground in existential and nihilist philosophy, lighting a fire for thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, and Martin Heidegger. Each of these philosophers wrestled with the daunting implications of a life that might be eternally repeated. For existentialists who were already preoccupied with questions of meaning, choice, and freedom, Nietzsche's eternal return struck at the heart of human agency. Sartre, with his belief in radical freedom and the weight of each choice, found in Nietzsche's idea a mirror to his own concept of being for itself, the awareness that we are responsible for defining our own essence through action. Camus, meanwhile, saw in the myth of eternal return an echo of his Sisyphus, a tragic yet defiant figure condemned to roll a boulder uphill for eternity. In both cases, eternal recurrence asks, how do you live meaningfully in a world stripped of guarantees, where meaning must be created anew, moment by moment, forever? In this philosophical family tree, Nietzsche's eternal return planted the seeds of a raw, often uncomfortable realism, one that called for the creation of value without any cosmic assurance. Yet not everyone saw eternal recurrence as an inescapable loop. Enter P.D. Ouspensky, a Russian philosopher and mystic who took Nietzsche's idea and gave it a surprising twist. Ouspensky believed that eternal return didn't have to be a prison sentence. Rather, it offered a hidden potential for liberation. In his semi-autobiographical novel Strange Life of Ivan Osokin, Ouspensky presents a character doomed to relive his life, only to realize that breaking the cycle would require a radical transformation of self. For Ouspensky, the cycle of recurrence could be transcended through a kind of awakening, a conscious effort to change oneself fundamentally. Influenced by the teachings of the mystic George Gurdjieff, Ouspensky suggested that through self-discipline and higher awareness, it was possible to escape this cosmic wheel, to evolve beyond the cycles and enter a new state of existence. This twist gave Nietzsche's relentless cycle a glimmer of hope, a belief that, with profound inner transformation, there might just be a way out. And then there's the science. While Nietzsche's eternal return was deeply philosophical, the concept found an intriguing parallel in the Poincaré recurrence theorem. French mathematician Henri Poincaré proposed in 1890 that, in certain closed systems, particles will eventually return to their original positions given enough time. This idea resonated with Nietzsche's philosophical musings, hinting at the possibility that even the physical universe might experience a kind of eternal return. Later scientific developments, like those in thermodynamics and chaos theory, opened the door to similar cyclical ideas, although none provide conclusive evidence for a cosmic loop at Nietzsche's scale. Still, the Poincaré recurrence theorem remains a fascinating echo of eternal return, suggesting that at least in some scientific frameworks, the past might indeed come back, albeit in forms far beyond human perception. The idea that the universe could play out infinitely, repeating itself with slight variations, remains a tantalizing thought experiment at the boundary of physics and philosophy. The psychological impact of contemplating eternal recurrence cannot be overstated. Imagine truly believing that every breath, every choice, and every relationship you've ever had will repeat forever. Such a perspective can be terrifying, pushing individuals into existential despair, or perhaps freeing, as it encourages them to value every moment as eternal. For some, the idea of recurrence is an incentive to live without regret, knowing that they'll encounter their decisions again and again. For others, it's a stark reminder of life's unyielding structure, a view that can lead to deep introspection or even nihilism. Could you handle the weight of your existence if every day were stamped with eternity? This is the final psychological test of Nietzsche's eternal return. It asks whether you can live not for an abstract ideal, not for a future reward, but for the life you have in your hands right now. It's a thought that can lead to profound resilience or to the brink of despair, and its power lies precisely in its relentless demand for self-confrontation. And so, Nietzsche's eternal return has left its mark on philosophy, from the ancient Stoics to modern existentialism and beyond. It is a thought experiment, a moral imperative, and a relentless challenge to embrace life on life's own terms. Eternal return asks you to live each moment with a fierce, uncompromising love for your fate, for all that is fleeting and flawed within it. Nietzsche offered no promise of salvation, no otherworldly consolation. Instead, he dared us to find transcendence within the confines of our own lives, to live as if each second were stamped with eternity. Today, the echoes of eternal return still challenge those who encounter it, forcing us to ask whether we are willing to embrace life's repetition, its pain, and its beauty with open arms. Nietzsche has left us with a haunting question. If every choice were to return endlessly, would you dare to live it all the same way? Thank you for joining me on this journey through eternity. If you found yourself challenged, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's unravel this mystery together. Until next time.